Why, hello.
Oh, you guys are way more prepared than me.
You usually have something.
I got nothing.
Can't you whistle and get your wife to come get you something?
I could if she were home.
Oh, but would she come and bring you something if you whistled?
I don't think she'd hear my whistle, but I could get her on her phone.
Okay. His wife is equally as stoic, so I have this constant urge to see if I can provoke something, knowing that it won't happen.
She's really hard to provoke. She works in retail.
No, that makes it double difficult.
They have a very fancy store, might I add. It's very beautiful.
Nice.
Anyway, so Dr. Brett, did you notice I can lift my coffee up and it stays in focus?
How is that?
Because there's a button that you can switch and make things go out of focus.
Oh.
And I had to switch the button, apparently. Anyway, it's very good. I missed you last week.
Me too.
So for the audience, it's Saturday, December 31st. It's that means it's New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon and I got up and we're working on the website this morning. And so I suggested that maybe the three of us could sit in because I know Brad is full of ideas. Now, Brad, you're full of ideas partly because you read a book. What book is that?
This book is quite an interesting book. It's for the conspiracy-minded people. There's I don't know how many chapters. There's 2 sets to this book by Whitney Webb, Volume 1 and Volume 2. But there's let me check back the second one. There's about 200 footnotes for every chapter.
Yeah.
And it's like documenting the amalgamation of organized crime with your government. There's 21 chapters.
Whitney Webb is sharp. She does good work.
She is super sharp. But it's awful to read because it's like this litany though of dragging your nose through it too much. It's like, oh my, and it's just too much, so much detail, and it's like more than you're gonna want to remember. And
They're gossipers. They're gossipers.
But I regard it as a duty to fulfill. So I read the thing so that somebody read it.
I don't what I found very interesting is like Musk coming out and say, all those fucking Elon Musk buys Twitter. And it says, it's worse. All those conspiracy theorist guys that we thought were crazy. It's actually worse. And I'm sitting here I'm trying to get you guys out of the conspiracy theory thing, because and because it just leads to complaining. But nope, I lost that fucking bad. I mean, that's over now.
Now what's your attitude now, Curt?
I'm like, okay, I'm giving up that mission.
I mean, you're only defeated by time, technology, and Pareto. That's it. All right, well, that's a rough opponent.
That's right.
So what did you go ahead?
Oh, it's just so I'm reading that, and it's like it's an interesting, it's a must read. So I have to read the second half because it's like there's an evolutionary function going on, because it's like sexual blackmail was the thing, and Epstein is kind of the focus of this. It's like the sordid union between intelligence and organized crime that gave rise to Jeffrey Epstein is the subtitle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but it's like sexual blackmail is the old thing. Now it's technological eavesdropping and data gathering on a mass scale that has never been done or was even possible before. So I'm kind of curious as to what her opinion is on what we're facing here in criminality and coercion, right?
It's, if you want me to, interesting. Okay, I'll just interject one thing. So the problem with having more information is that you have less curation. In other words, just like you're enabling women to act really badly with OnlyFans, giving the government more information enables the people in the government who want to get attention or careerism political alliances, and there's a tendency in the government to think the public is stupid, so to rally against the people, and to find all these political currencies. And so the more government information a government has, the more problematic it is. On the other hand, that would apply the more in-group you have, but the more out-group competition you have from within, the more the government has to try to prevent dangerous conflicts that they themselves have created by this introduction of diversity. And so there's this unvirtuous cycle between the claim that diversity is good, white replacement really, and the need for the government to collect information to police the conflict that they themselves created. Well, and
I don't look at them as wanting to do that.
Wait a minute. When what happens always is the same thing as, why do moms in minivans get $700 speeding tickets for going 4 miles over the speed limit in a white suburban community with no crime? Whereas, why? Because it's economically and careerist rewarding at the lowest cost. Whereas trying to stop drug dealers and organized crime is very tedious and expensive, and you can't do it on your own. You have to do it through an organization, except that what is happening to that organization as this atomization is happening is the organizations don't need to cooperate. So the less information the government has, the more the organizations need to cooperate, which prevents them from working on small independent things and forces them to work on collective big things, right? And so the unvirtuous economy this produces is fucking evil as hell. Anyways, that's mine. If you look at that's the economic analysis of the evil that results from government having too much information, is you're empowering individuals to act as individuals without the curatorial function of competing institutions. Then we get to what happens is, of course, the institutions only compete when there's games like this, like arresting what's his name, Andrew Tate the other day. What a fucking ass clown thing that was to do. Or prosecuting Trump, getting his tax returns. We find out that he's the only politician in recorded history that's actually lost money as president.
Right.
Anyway, so
they're punishing scapegoated individual examples of what they do at scale all the time.
It's duplicity. So what's the matter, Brad?
Nothing.
I wanted to finish my little
I know
there, so I felt, but I interrupted you.
No, it's like this. It's a very weird thing. It's like what they tend to do is there's all these groups that are engaged in underworldly behavior. So they're utilizing the unethical triangle below the ethical triangle, right? Mm-hmm. So the entire diamond is being occupied, and they just burn the ones they burn them. They just kill the people that are not processing information the way they prefer around the edges. And it's like, and previously useful to that organization, now discarded and buried. It's rough. It's okay. Anyway, they're kind of frenemies, they're competing and friendly enemies. So and like subcurrents within the that group.
The interesting thing is that when any police organization spends enough time around criminals across the spectrum, doesn't mean if they're very sophisticated or very primitive. The cops begin to think like criminals, and the criminals begin to think like cops. And this is a transfer of knowledge and information that is contrary to the public's benefit.
We're trying to do that to everybody with the law.
Right, but The law works because you produce a market by which the good, honest, and moral people, the honest, good, and honest, moral, and good. It's honest, moral, and virtuous people. Suppress the people whose tendency it is to follow the incentives to work against the interests of the people as a whole. So,
Right.
Dr. Brad, you don't see you're definitely tired today.
I am. Like I said, I've been up 27 hours. I put a couple hours.
Why are we
Should I?
occupying you when? I mean, I want to talk to you because I miss you,
Right.
but I don't want to. You sent all these messages over the past week,
Yeah.
which I
But
treat
it's because
as,
I was inspired, oddly inspired.
right.
Which is
and I'm
like this.
Okay, well now I'm going to see a very inspired Dr. Brad, right?
I
Who's
am
brimming
very
with
inspired, but
enthusiasm.
I'm kind of like low energy inspired
Yeah.
and inspired at the same time, which is kind of a high voltage, lower current.
You're
Yeah.
inspired and tired. We get it.
So
It's like goes to this quote I sent you, which is H.L. Mencken. This is what inspired me. Every election is a sort of advance auction sale of stolen goods.
yes.
And so it's like this. So we just tell the people what we wish to steal and what their cut is, just like everybody else does. And I think they'll go for it. I think we have the best offer yet.
Well, I would feel differently if the government put the things it stole to the what the public demanded that followed their promise, but they don't. They give it to their payors, right?
Well, the thing that caught my attention was this. You've heard of Catherine Austin Fitts,
Of course.
Yes.
and she's quoted in here, and she says she found 20 trillion. And I'm like, oh, okay, so let's just go get that 20 trillion and then split it up amongst the group. You know, to some degree, have a plan for how do you spend the $20 trillion?
Where does she say that 20 trillion is?
It's gone into the markets.
Okay, so
And it's offshore in weird places. It's in weird places.
yep.
I'm looking it up. I'm looking up the reference to it because it's only mentioned in passing. Turns out she's a banker. I didn't know she was a banker. And
Women are good at empirical research.
she was a banker, and all the bankers are involved in money laundering. And it's like, okay, so she's like, oh, that's where it went. It got absorbed in and it got whitewashed.
Over what period?
I don't have a number.
Let me see if in my head it's the same. Because it depends on how much money is stolen per year.
Yeah.
And I can and I've done a basic sketch of this.
Okay.
And, and there's nothing that our people want that can't be paid for by the amount of money that's stolen every year.
Right.
The amount of money that's stolen every year is enough to pay for basically the things we want, which is the trillion, which is healthcare and
right,
and Social Security and stuff. Now, we have to realize that it's not one of those zero-sum games, right? The fact that the opportunity to steal $1 trillion, $2 trillion a year, right? $3 trillion a year, it's somewhere in that range, right? My gut is it's right now it's over 3 million, 3 trillion, it's good, 3 trillion a year. So if you can steal 3 trillion a year, the thing is the bait of that 3 trillion does cause things to happen in the economy. Yes. Right now, so that's the first steps. However, what that doesn't say is if the 3 trillion were still captured but put to public ends, that we would produce better incentives, which is my argument. So my view is if we stop the 3 trillion stolen per year, and we stop the 1.5 to 2 trillion that I'm got my eyes on, that's out of 23 trillion. That's like 20% of the fucking GDP of the country. If that could be allocated to things that had basically, other than top consumption or top hedonism, because it's just money games up there. It was actually devoted toward long-term investment, because that's where it have to. If you have to, you can't extract things from people for consumer loans and home. If you can't extract things, you have to put that money into risk profiles, investments. So if we go after that 20 trillion that's accumulated, and we stop the 2 trillion that's stolen a year now,
The bleed.
and we stop the bleed, we put it in there. The one time 20 trillion makes the public happy, right? Which is what your point is, right? And the 3 trillion is what makes them happy in the future, right? Happy now and happy in the future. And I think it's a great argument.
So I'm just like this. So then I became further inspired. I'm all around the country and having to hang around at airports for a couple hours here and there. And I'm like, just start writing down, if we're going to just take stuff, what else are we going to take? You might as well write it all down and just take it all at once, because you're going to have the crew together to make the demand. Might as well just everybody write down what you want on the it's like the Christmas list for Saint Nick.
I like putting the law on the other side of the win. We gift you a moral license to take back what was stolen from you. If you abuse the law in pursuit of what was stolen from you, we are going to abuse you when it's over.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the law is for, to set limits. It's limitless right now. There's outlaws everywhere. So understanding our program affords you to adjudicate disputes where you are, voluntarily or involuntarily.
Yeah, I agree. Now, what Brad is trying to get at is, he's basically saying, what's the message we can take?
Bingo.
To the people.
We have to. Well, 80% of them are going to do nothing. They have to know how to be out of the way. Right. So what are they getting in return?
When you start telling people this is what's been stolen from you, and this is how we're going to bring it back, and this is what we're going to do with it. That's a promise.
I was looking at it as it's necessary to have the promise of what we're going to do, and part of that is we need boots on the street, and there's a reward for that job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's affordable within the context of what we're talking about.
This is part of moving people up through that hierarchy we were talking about earlier, Curt. Right? Jobs produce returns, returns produce surplus, surplus produces.
Well, I have part of my strategy I don't talk about.
Right.
Because I don't want it to be circumvented. But there are ways of paying people to show up. All right. And part of the reason to have people show up is to obtain the payment for showing up.
That's right.
And so I don't talk about this anymore because it's too, but to circumvent the details, it's quite easy to make it so that we can pay people to show up. And then that alleviates the risk that's preventing them from showing up today, which is their problem. A lot of these guys are disenfranchised, or they've got, on the one hand, and they don't have assets, or they're invested in the system and they have assets they want to protect. And so the left is parasitic and depends on institutions that aren't bound by the market forces. or they're outside the market forces, which means they're at the bottom, or they're women who are dependent on the system. So our guys are, of course, more, they want fairly clear certainty because they actually have more to risk. So we have to give them greater certainty, and to give them greater certainty means we have to have a plan that's in detail. So I like what you're saying, but then I would say, well, the problem is, how do you get over that last hump, which is how you show up? And you say, well, you're going to come here to get the money, right, that you're due, and this is why you're due it. And we're going to pay you right as soon as you show up, well, relatively quickly after you show up, so that you are insulated from it, and you don't have to go home until you're paid that. I think that's what solves the issue. And if you start thinking about who actually keeps the world alive, it's these guys. They're the ones that make everything work. And so as long as you take away the economic risk from them, and you say, not only are we taking the economic risk from them, but we're going to give you payment to make sure it is, then we're going to take that $20 trillion and give it back to you. And then we're going to make sure that everybody gets the trillions of dollars in benefits that they should be getting that are currently extracted from them. And furthermore, there's nothing magical about what's happening here. It happens throughout history. The Roman reforms are the last biggest one that we can think of, but it's not uncommon. In fact, we do stuff like this all the time. Now, here's what I'm worried about, is that many of those trillions of dollars are out there in what we call promissory assets. In other words, they're speculative assets. So what the government is going to be in the position of having to do fairly soon, within the next 3 to 5 years, because this looks like it's going to be it's not going to be this kind of correction. It's going to be this correction. It's going to have it's going to have at least 2 drops. So we'll have we were just recovering from the first drop. We're going to hit the second drop, and that's the one that really goes the bottom. And if not, the third one absolutely will. But usually it's the second drop that takes people out of their optimism. And so what they're going to do is inflate the fuck out of everything and kill those investors anyway. And so it's not the investors aren't going to get screwed anyway. The question is whether we get the money before it's inflated away.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
There's a window to pivot.
Well, I mean, you want to do that because you want to get that money into hands moving through the economy
when it's still worth stuff.
When it's still worth something, so it prevents the need for. Anyway, so we want to. Right. So people don't think about it this way, but after the Second World War, the government just raised taxes, inflated the shit out of everything.
Right.
And it killed every fucking creditor, which didn't get restored until, I don't know, I was in late college. So just coming out of college, which was the 80s. So the creditors didn't get their asses protected again until the 80s, early 80s. And so this run-up has been since the 80s, which is what you've seen. So there's only, given that we've proved in 2008, the government's out of levers. The only thing they can do is inflate. When it's inflated, what happens? Your salary will eventually go up. I mean, in the 70s when it happened, my parents bought their house for $44,000, and 2 years later it was worth $200,000.
Wow!
Because it destroyed the value of money. Right. Well, I mean, if you're a homeowner today, I mean, not one who's bought recently, but one who's owned for a few years before the crisis, I mean, you're going to be in the same position. There's a lag to the income, to the rise of wages.
Yeah.
But over the course of your loan, then you're going to, a 30-year home mortgage, your mortgage is going to be free, because that's how big an inflation it has to.
It's going to thump all the retirees, and that's the way I think they're going to get thumped.
Well, thumping the retirees gradually. In other words, extending, there's only so much retiree money per year, right? Right. So you distribute that over a long time. That's different from collapsing creditors right away.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not quite as bad. And there's also the neutrality of money problem, right? So the argument is do money neutral means if I change the value of a supply of money, how does how does that change in the supply of money work its way through the economy, and did anything actually change after I did that? Right. So my argument the Austrian argument is that money is neutral, and the empirical argument is, well, it's like it's like a balloon full of holes. There are places in the world where money evaporates into uselessness. It's not quite that close to, it's like what lots of classical thinking is right at the first stage of logic, but not at the subsequent stages.
So leaky hydraulics.
It's a very leaky system, but it does work through the economy like that eventually. But the problem is, one of the places it leaks is, which is what makes our people pissed off, is it leaks into the financial system, where it's mostly collected. And that's really where the wealth of the financial elites comes from. And so when you and I talk about this stuff, we're talking about it at a domestic level. And Brad, you're always good about bringing it up at the international level with the WEF and all these other fucking nutcases. But if we essentially stop that, which is quite easy given the way I'm talking about it, there's nowhere for that to go. They're dead. Right? I mean, you kill them economically, and then we return national sovereignty again. But I mean, the whole conspiratorial method is you can govern by finance if you can fool people into following it. We can restore government by choice and finance as assistance and the organization of cooperation instead of the organization of predation. And so we've done all the work on this, right? We've done all the work on how to fix this. But what you're saying is we can talk about the value of law and whatever, but really we ought to be talking about is money. I mean, that's what I hear you saying.
I see it as the the value of putting your boots on the ground. We have to demonstrate the value or show the value of what it is worth to get that done, if that is the objective. And it's like I saw a way to accomplish that, and it was kind of surprising to me, to be honest.
Well, we'll talk about that a little bit, because
Right.
I want to be able to I want to be able to add detail to the audience so they know it's possible, instead of just hint that it's a theory, because it's actionable, possible, operationalizable, whatever. And we don't need a lot. We need just enough guys to make that first step happen, and all the rest steps are contingent. Are just natural consequences of the first step, which is. So when you say, how did you just say it? What's the story we tell people to get boots on the ground?
Right. To show the value of doing it. Demonstrate the value conceptually, like in an abstract way, to make it worth the enactment of it.
Mm-hmm.
To the individual.
Explain it as ensuring people's actions. If you're taking actions on behalf of this plan, we ensure your actions against retaliation. I mean, it's a promise.
That's a very attractive message.
What does saying no tell us about you once the message is delivered?
You don't have an opinion.
No.
Yes, that will work. Okay, so Brad, I feel I'm abusing you. I feel like I'm abusing you because I had anticipated. I didn't put together a lot of any topics for today because I anticipated you being so effusively energetic and enthused, but I didn't anticipate you not having any sleep. So
That was hard. That was unanticipatable.
right. So do I would like to continue this discussion after you've had sleep. But so do you want me to bring up some of my topics or no?
Sure.
Because I feel like I could carry this discussion, but I don't feel you have the energy to push back on me, if that's the correct way to put it. Is that your usual do your usual duty?
I'm here.
Yeah, you're
good to
here,
go.
but you're not you.
I'm good to go.
Yeah.
This is touchy topics.
Well, it's gotten less touchy, I mean, over the past few months. And so
it goes like this. Like I'll tell you the other thoughts processes that were going through my head, like has to do with the fact is that I seek to employ the hospital as a tool to attempt to prepare the county for the possibility of a nuclear war, which may be delivered to us by our dear leaders in Washington. And I'm very irritated by that premise. I'm like, that's not pleasant to me at all. But it is like, okay,
what's around? There's nothing around you.
Thank God. This is
there was a map back in the 90s of where Russia's missiles were targeted. And there were obvious things. Mostly military bases and ports, things like that. But Russia can't do that. That's not possible. They'd kill him if he tried. I can't believe he's still there, but I mean, it's kind of impressive. He's still there at this point. All the Russians keep falling out of windows. I wonder what is the pattern. So this, I'm just being a bit of an ass by making this bit of humor, but it looks to me like what he's doing is just finding what oligarchs, in other words, what people who are rich can we kill and take all their money?
See, this is how I regard this very question that we were talking about today.
Pretty good strategy.
It's the rude questions. The 5 rude questions, right?
Yes.
And that's the same questions that we are going to put out as the
I want to be able to ask people, why can't I love you and share my stuff? But I can't.
Yes. Can you
won't get a straight answer.
Well, no, that's important. Because the 5 questions are, what's the first question of philosophy, the first question of ethics, the first question of politics? I'm missing one.
Yeah. We ask them all from a position of agency and power. Right.
We say, well, the answer is, ethics is, why don't I kill you and take your stuff? Why don't you commit suicide? Well, answer that one, and then you'll know the whole best the rest. Why don't I kill you and take your stuff? Why don't me and mine kill you and take your stuff? Why don't me and mine conquer and rule you? Right? I mean, goes up the escalation. Well, the answer is we can. So the question is, we would rather love you But love requires reciprocity, right? Truth, reciprocity, and equal duty. It requires we do the same thing.
Yes.
And so why aren't you making it so that I can love you? As because Brandon likes to jump ahead to the end point of the logic, and I feel like I have to
You can pull everybody through.
to get everybody there by one lily pad at a time. But you know, I think, Brad, the reason I was subconsciously affected by it, because I've had the FBI in here telling me that they'd love to put me in jail too many times, and including telling my family that.
Nice.
Because I said this is possible, right? But they don't account for whether the objective is moral, right? Is restoration of the Constitution. They just say they want to preserve power. They don't care whether it's moral and just and constitutional or not.
Right.
And the truth is they can't understand. Right. In other words, they're just not able to understand. And the guy who follows I have my own agent. He's quite a nice guy. He's tall, handsome, intelligent. What? I'm not.
I want to ask his name. That's what.
No, I don't know. I don't remember his name.
I know that.
The way they do it is they make the police officer they bring with you the contact so that they don't have to show who they are.
Yes.
I mean, I recognize him in a minute, but so my agent, he's read all my stuff, the whole thing, quotes it to me, and the whole time I'm like, wow, fuck, dude, I'm kind of impressed, right? I mean, but didn't really get it, right? Didn't get it. And so, you know, and that's an FBI guy, right? FBI people aren't stupid, right? It's not like it's like CIA, FBI, and your state police, and then your local cops, right? This is like this IQ hierarchy. Well, I get shot for that at some point, but it's just the scope of the responsibility, right? You have because the populations you're looking at. So you read all that stuff, and I'm like, dude, you know, I got to tell you that this is going to happen. It doesn't matter what I think if I'm here or not. It's going to happen. The difference is we can try to bring it about a just conclusion or an unjust, but whether I'm here or not doesn't matter because people aren't going to put up with this. Even though the millennials are doing a good job of turning every face into a vagina.
They're not. They are superior at that than other generations.
Yes.
My.
Anyway, so yeah, the point, Brad, I think you're making is that subconsciously I was affected. I mean, Eli certainly was too. It affected John severely. And so I was affected by it enough that I said, I'm just not going to talk about. I took all the stuff of how to do revolution down and I just left it off and I just worked on law. But I mean, if the Overton window continues to move where it is, that's fine. And I think what you're saying is.
Can't we make it easy for them to defect to us?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
I mean, it's in we've got it already in the outline you and I talked about, right? Of course, the answer is without a monarchy, you have to go to the military, but there's no it's pretty hard to go to the military as a hierarchy. You have to go to the military bottom up. And you go to the military bottom up through the people who've been in the military, then in the military, and then you work your way up. So it's a harder problem. On the other hand, you know, if you you bring something to conclusion and you request the military, right, to help resolve the difference, you're putting them in the position where they don't want to be, which is essentially, some place would call it a coup. We're not asking for that, right? We're asking for the military to be the last defender of our rights because we don't have a king.
Or make a plea.
It's an ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're not asking them to rule. We're saying we're going to demand these laws go in place as settlement our differences. Now the military is going to say, okay, let's keep the peace, right? and get some government officials in here. What we'll all do is find some people in government who are willing to go with it, and go and settle it. I think that's probably pretty easy. I don't think we have to go to the aggressive side, because what we've always said, our whole problem is getting the message out. The whole purpose, at least to me, of getting guys together is to actually lay out the demand so that people can we can have the conversation, because the people are too ignorant of the possibilities. Now, it is very hard to argue if you're center left or even pretty left wing. If you consider all the fucking evils that we're trying to kill right now, how many of them the left doesn't disagree with what we're doing? What they disagree with is their status. And we can't fix that. There's no way to fix it. There is, however, a way to fix the predatory inequality that they're suffering under. Right?
Which they rightfully recognize.
So the right, the problem with the right is that they want quick, clean decisions that can be made and can walk away from. Right? That's the whole right wing thing. I want to get this done and go on to something else. Whereas there's, I would think of myself as a libertarian. I'm like, the problem never goes away. It's constant vigilance, or you lose it. So I think I've noticed this in myself over the past month, is that given that the public's becoming more aware of the problem and the discourse is more open, it seems to me that we can again talk about action. And what I like about the action that you're describing, Brad, is it's very tangible. Right? It's very tangible. This is our goal, and it gives us that tangible money in your hand gives people an incentive to learn more about what we do. Now, is some of the feminine left going to be pissed off about the hard truths we put down? Absolutely. Well, so is the hard right. They're fucking wrong. Right? So, I mean, wrong in the sense that hard right government doesn't work. Right? It doesn't work. It doesn't work unless you have, as I talked to Roger just today, he put out a beautiful video on family structures, which is largely the result of what's his name? L'Enfance, God, forgetting his name, a French social scientist, and he and his imitators, there are many. He covered family structures, and your family structure will determine the kind of government you can have. And I thought he did a beautiful job at it. I get to take a little credit for suggesting he reframe Africa a little bit, and he absolutely killed it. Absolutely did a great job. It's phenomenal work. And so he did a piece released yesterday on it. We can't have an authoritarian government. You can have a via negativa government, which is a libertarian government, and it may be true that there are people who can't handle responsibility demanded by the level of responsibility mandated in modernity. Obviously, there are people who can't do it. So we have a choice. We either separate governments, or we create a hierarchical government with multiple economies, right? But in either event, the problem is going to be is that the feminine left, the women, the emotional women, and the feminine left, they are going to always rebel against the fact that they are de facto at the bottom.
Rebellion against the truth is a criminal activity.
What?
Rebellion against the truth is a criminal activity.
Right, but that's like telling women
we're separating the immoral from the immature. That's the children who need to be stewarded right through a maturity path. You're not at the same place throughout your whole life. People move from being dependents. There are always dysfunctionals. The law deals with them.
But here's Brad brought up a great example today. You mentioned a couple of women authors today. The one who wrote the book,
Whitney Webb,
and the other two were something.
Catherine Austin Fitts.
Okay, all right. So same thing with my hero, which is Eleanor Ostrom in economics. Right? Now, and or another hero of mine, which is Babbage's wife. Right. These are things where women excel in politics. It's not in the politics itself. It's in the empirical analysis of the social conflicts that need resolution, that raise themselves to politics. So when I say women can't think in politics, I mean that as they can't think in systems, right? And so you don't see women intellectuals coming up with innovations, because all innovations are innovations in the scope of systems. But you do see women contributing to political discourse in the ascertainment of facts across large amounts of data, because frankly, they're just really fucking good at understanding the empathic concerns of individuals and social groups and functions, and then investigating all that stuff and coming up with. Now, men will always reduce it to some fucking algorithm.
Well, scale, limits, accountability, violence. They're not doing any of that.
What?
Women.
Right, but they wait. I want to let me continue this arc. I can't believe I have to get you to. I mean, I usually it's him. You know?
He's tired. I'm on his side.
He's helping me.
Ew, you look tired, and I'll switch sides.
Oh my.
So I don't want to say women have nothing to say about politics. It's actually women have a lot to say about society. What are they having to say about politics is something else.
You're saying they have too much to say, Curt?
I'm saying women have too much. Well, I mean, I had this with I had this discussion yesterday with somebody I won't mention, and I said, now let me ask you an asinine question. Right? Can women think? In the sense that men mean it, no. Can men understand in the sense that women mean it? No. Right? These two things are different things. Understanding and thinking. All right. Thinking means we're predicting a system, an outcome of a system, regardless of whether we like it or not. But understanding, which is what women are quite good at, is understanding the behavior of individuals within that system, right? And they're predicting their emotions. And so I'm like, well, okay, so what is that? What do we do with government to make this goes back to what you're saying is you can't lie, right? Is how do we make this clarify this? Because you don't want to say, I don't want to say, I would say a women's house is a social house and men's house is a political house, because that's what we're able to comprehend and make decisions on. And if you look at the history, there's not a single fucking woman who can think, but there's a lot of women who can understand.
We can't afford them to suffer the temperamental variance. You know, men act in systems that are beyond the risk-taking we should afford women.
Well, they want to avoid risk, right? That's the whole thing of why they focus on society, because they don't want to carry the burden of responsibility of resolving conflict.
I'm trying to double down on let's lean into the left's frames that Brad brought up at the beginning of the whole thing. It's like they're making the case for equality. We just make the case for inequality and that it's better for them. It's like we raise you above men. You're not lumberjacks because we don't put you out there to die and get hit by trees. That's why.
Some of that is that they're not. It's very hard to make most women competent in what they're not interested in. I don't want to design Barbie doll clothes. I mean,
the same for men.
If I spent 5 years at it, I absolutely promise you, I would be really great at it. I would hate every minute of those 5 years, right?
You have to do it as a side project, right? For like 15 years from now.
I just gave myself a fucking nightmare.
I want to tell you a story just because it's ridiculous.
Okay.
I had a patient who was he was a rancher kid, and he lived on a ranch,
He lives on a
And
ranch.
he always would come in with a joke. Now, he had some pretty serious health issues, and I treated him and his mom. And then it turns out, I discovered later that it turns out that he had another job, which totally blew me away. He designed dancer costumes in Vegas. And I'm like, how did you get the job? It's just like I just, this guy looks like a cowboy.
Yes.
It's just like, oh, okay, that was comic relief.
No, but there's stuff that goes on like that, right? But I mean, this is the problem. If you get a man who wants to specialize in something, he will be better than the women because we're just better at specialization. But women tend to be better at generalization. So I mean, we're trying to make these points, but I mean,
It's funny because it mirrors the way they think.
what?
Men generalize in thinking, and women
Yeah.
personalize.
And so I'll say that again because that was that needs to be more
We generalize. We usually talk in general rules, and women, they personalize. They talk about people themselves, how they feel about something.
it's all experience or emotion or change in state, which I find really interesting. We specialize, but we're not resistant to changing in state. In other words, knowledge, adaptation, political state. They generalize, but they resist adaptation to change. Why the fuck is that?
They have to remain the bridge for children.
Yeah. I have to explain that. I can't tell if that's an evolutionary
There's a
cause or consequence. I suspect it's a consequence, not a cause. The cause has to be to do with something with risk and being a prey animal,
yes.
perceiving risk, and difficulty in system prediction over time. That's probably what it is. Yeah, that's what it is. Because it all comes down to neural economy.
Right. The supply demand curve.
So I went on that for a reason. What? Because Brandon, you said the original question was, are we going to make a lot of people happy? The problem we're not going to make happy is people whose status, they want their status to be higher than it is.
I'm unsure they want their status to be higher, or if they just want the respect that comes with higher status. You mean if they are afforded an avenue for their duty and are delivered respect to a certain degree, I think we will ameliorate some of their problems. And if we don't, then we just go, well, you're a dysfunctional, delinquent, ungrateful, peasant. Move aside, and we have every
You're
right.
dysfunctional child.
Yeah, and we can say that. Or provide them in. We used to put people in asylums and so on. There's no reason we shouldn't steward the dysfunctional so long as they're not violent. They have a joy for this place too. The criminal ones we're supposed to deal with. We can't parse people now.
Woman, do I want to talk about this? Well, I have my way of giving back, right? We all have our ways of giving back. And one of the ways I gave back is I hired students to put them in special programs, right, for us to advance their careers. Basically all of them failed. And this was very interesting for me. I also would give women who had difficulties, like they'd been arrested or something, a job and see if I could help them. Right? This has to do with whatever. And so one of the women I'm talking about got arrested for driving pot across country. She's just what do you call it? A mule?
A mule.
And of course, she got caught with a big sting and the whole thing. And so she knew I was in this thing, and so she contacted me and said, can you help me out? So, they put her on her ankle, one of those ankle things, made her stay in the house. And you're talking about somebody who had those very negative intuitions about not adapting, but being caught in a house for 6 months or a year, whatever it was.
Yeah. Wow.
That changed the behavior. So,
So you're really worried about what the pandemic did.
well, the pandemic, we know it was way worse. I mean, we're going to be paying for the pandemic forever, right? But the point I'm trying to make is that what you said, people who have, it's actually a non-traumatic means of making people make better choices, right? That you don't have to traumatize people to make them make better choices. You have to prohibit them from anything that allows them to make a bad choice. And this girl was telling me that they really just interview me every month. And I resist, right? Because I don't want to be that person they want me to be until you do. And that's when they let you out of the system. So I hate throwing people in the system, but there's large parts of our system that work. I would like to find a better way than that one. But that works. I worked at an asylum. No, I wasn't a fucking member. It was my job to paint the fucking lines on the road. Okay, I was a high school kid, so I painted the line. I delivered the milk in the morning, and then I painted. That was a summer job. I painted lines on the road. One of the things I learned about watching the kids in the asylum is that the minute someone is looking, they were mean to each other.
Huh.
And it's the same thing with high school. You put people in school, the minute they can play some stupid fucking game, they will. But you don't see that with homeschooled kids. And so there's a thing, the problem appears to be isolating an individual in a condition of normalcy where he can't be infected by people like them, which is the problem with schools and prisons and most things. I'm giving these examples because it's better to give an example like this than to quote fucking papers, right? I mean, if I quote a paper, it's like, yeah, there's a million papers, most of them are shit, right? But if you talk about something that's a real example, it communicates the value proposition. So
you're just encouraging people to turn into a parasitic group and a parasitic in-group, right?
Well, you're causing reinforcement of their negative behavior by
Putting them around people that are all the same.
They're all the same.
Well, we have all of our special interest groups are like that. They all emerge like that. The pride groups and so on.
Well, it's the problem with what's the Ford Foundation? Starts out with Henry Ford, who's a anti-Semitic, racist, absolute elitist. You know, I mean, the whole thing. And what happens to the Ford Foundation? It's, you know, a cesspool of leftism, right? Well, that's because the kind of people that go into that. Right. It's one of the reasons you shouldn't create a foundation.
Right.
Is it collects the kind of people that mutually enforce their addiction to attention, virtue signal, and unearned virtue signals. As I say about our people, we could attract a bunch of super nerds. I mean, you know. So anyway, so those questions are tied together, which is there are people who you were saying, I was saying, well, I mean, we can satisfy the majority of the population. The only people we can't satisfy are the dysfunctionals. And you're saying, well, the truth is we can fix dysfunctionals. And the truth is we can. There are people. Is about somewhere under 3% of the population, which is a fairly large number. They're just fucked in the head, right? I mean, it's not like they're just traumatized. I mean, there's something fucking wrong with them, right?
The doctor probably knows best.
Well,
it's true.
I mean, once you get into schizophrenia, what are you gonna fucking do, right?
Protect them from themselves.
Hard problem.
It's a, this is just that's not a. I got some bad ideas in my head. I was around some bad people. I misunderstood the metaphysics of the world, right? That's all. I mean, all of us. I mean, I got everybody. Anybody has some sort of trauma, you have that kind of crap, right? I mean, and that trauma can come when you're 3 years old and it doesn't make any sense to you, or when your parents get divorced, or somebody dies, or you just have a bad year in school. I mean, you could get trauma from all sorts of shit, right? But that's one thing. But you know, the whole psychosis, schizophrenia. I mean, that's just fucking horrible. But and it's a non-trivial percentage of the population. Well, we're not trying to worry about them. Those people can only be cared for. They can't be autonomous.
That's right. You may be able to improve their functionality, but you're not presuming that you're going to be able to turn them into productive citizens.
We can't improve their competency, right? I mean, so the Brandon says, okay, so Brandon says, okay, but even for and above that, we have the people who are bothered by their status. In the conservative, you would express it as I'm being left behind, right? Which is a systemic version. And the leftist feminine version would be I'm being oppressed. So that's the problem at the left, right? They're being oppressed. Well, some of them are oppressed because they're in the dysfunctional category that need training, right? Well, obviously, the number of people who are Antifa that are criminal is fairly high, right? The number of people who are in the dysfunctional left, they're and then there are what we consider the good people on the left, is they're just wrong. You know, they just, you know, the world isn't good for them on the terms that they want. But you know, there's no reason you can't mandate respect. I mean, the Russians did it. Phenomenally. One of the things I love about living over there is if there's a fucking drunk guy in the street, you're supposed to love and respect that person, right? But you're not allowed to contribute to his drunkenness. Right? So respect can be mandated, right, without too much difficulty. Right? And if respect is mandated, your reason for rebellion, which is what Brandon is getting at, is ameliorated, right? I mean, because right, the rest of it's just what job can I do and what purchasing power do I have? So who is there besides the financial sector, the left-wing academy, and the lying reporter media, and our deep state bureaucracy? Even that, I don't know how many of the right, you guys are going to beat me up because of my fucking optimism here. It's okay. In the deep state bureaucracy, how many of those people are like the kids who need to have ankle bracelets? Right?
Way more than you think.
Right. They're just wrong and maladapted, but they can be disciplined.
Yes.
Right. So my view is that we need that discussion. That we need to have that discussion and say we want to, as Brandon says, I want to make it so I can love you. Please help me.
The problem you're going to have is the people who falsely believe themselves to be competent by virtue of the fact that they have such credentials. And they will reject the loss of status.
Well, let's ask this. Okay, so that's a great question. I'm not sure that happens. Here's why. We have a concentration of people in the federal government that needs to be distributed to the states. Because many of the same functions need to happen. But they need to happen according to the wants and needs of the cultures in those states, not according to what the average is calculated in Washington, which is there are no averages among peoples, right? So I just see that as the fundamental issue. There's going to be a need for the credentialed class. The problem is we have to reframe, we have to provide the incentives, positive, which taking care of your locality, and we have to provide the disincentives, the law, that regulate this. And the most important part of it, as Brandon brought up earlier, I think is just demanding people speak truthfully or reciprocally, and they don't engage in false promises. Because, I mean, it should not be acceptable for us to say the Mississippi is, you know, poor because of oppression. It's not. You got an 89 IQ over there, because that means too many of your goddamn people are below the threshold of technological employability. That's just the answer. So what kind of society do you have to build there? Well, you have to have one where there's more organization of capital under more directed labor. And you're going to have lower returns on organization of capital by directed labor than you will have by organizational capital, by self-organized capital under self-directed labor. You're going to have higher returns, because the friction of the learning curve and the adaptivity is what determines the returns on your assistance to other people. It's just what it is. But that doesn't mean people aren't due respect. I always look at it the other way. If you're one of my peers, you better be fucking hot on it, right? But if you're like the average working guy, I'm going to give you respect.
That's right.
This is noblesse oblige, right? I was definitely indoctrinated into the purpose of nobility is provide example for and assistance to the people who are less fortunate, which is the aristocracy's version of the church.
That's right. It's like the expanded version of the family.
Correct. We make a joke about it, but you know, the nuclear family is the maximum atomization that's possible while still having a family responsible for the training of children. Right? I mean, so we've atomized everything. Now these assholes on the left are trying to atomize it to the individual, to primitivize us back down to African standards of development, and they're succeeding with the lower level whites. They're turning lower class whites into essentially African culture, which is what black culture is now, which is there's no family, right? The mother's the family and males rotate. Where was the thread we were going on? Oh, my thread was, so why if we get attention, what is anybody going to complain about? The truth?
Yes. Precisely.
Loudly. And that aids our cause.
What?
That aids our cause. They're going to cause a conflict about not wanting to adapt to reality. Well, it's going to be funny to watch. Because the case is closed recently, right? We could only make the scientific case that social science is closed by like 2020.
That's right.
All right, well, that was 2 years ago. How fast do people want us to be?
I still find the odd asshole that says IQ doesn't measure intelligence, and we're all equal. There's no difference. And that beautiful study that came out about dog breeds and how they're organized the other day was fucking hysterical, because I'm, these are the basic instincts of dogs, and here's how they've been amplified in these breeds and whatever. And I'm like, what's the fucking difference between us and them? None. There's none. My wife used to say my golden retriever was gay.
Oh my.
He wasn't, right? It's just that they're very they want to please you. They're very empathic.
Mm-hmm.
And the Doberman, the next door neighbor's Doberman, Todd's dog, he doesn't want to please you. He wants to do his fucking job. Fucking on alert every goddamn moment. And my wife's German short hair is dumb as a fucking rock. If it's not a bird or a squirrel, it's not interesting, right? And besides the fact they can't change context in their head without spinning in a fucking circle. I don't know if you've ever encountered that. That's one of the things that goes wrong with German short hair pointers, or pointers in general, is that the reason they point is because they get stuck in the prey sequence. They get stuck. They freeze. And so one of the way they do it is to get out of it is by spinning. In other words, they spin around in a circle to get unstuck. So once in a while, you'll encounter a German short hair pointer that's broken, So bad breeding job, and they just keep spinning.
We describe that in the dog sport world as being stuck in prey, because you can play with a dog and bait them with the sleeve, and
Yes.
they'll pause and bark, and then they'll spin. Like, you don't spin. Keep your eyes on the person you're trying to kill. Don't spin around.
So people are
That's
just
right.
so the hard part is, of course, the feminine left that we say is empathizing, but is actually solipsizing and projecting. Right? They're not empathizing. They're personalizing, solipsizing, and projecting
Yes.
as if other people are them. And so you have a problem with them, and they're like, you can't explain to them. You can't actually think. You can only understand. And in your case, you're not even understanding. You're just projecting.
Projecting is like is a false form of understanding.
Understanding. It's false. It's pretense of understanding. It's like the guys who think they're making good arguments that it really sounds like a 5-year-old. Right.
It's the ones that make you mad because they're saying some conspiracy theory.
Well, I'm fucked on that one now. I
No, that's why I mentioned it.
I know.
Your scientific rigor put you in that corner.
What?
Said your scientific rigor put you in that corner.
Yeah, I know. But I'm like many things. I'm willing to admit defeat on a subject. But what just to run with that a little bit, the fun part about the conspiracy theories coming out is that people are no longer angry. No one takes them seriously.
It is alleviating a stress point.
It's had a positive benefit.
So that I don't understand that one exactly. Please elucidate.
Well, when everybody will believe you, you double down on the amplitude and aggression.
Oh yes, yeah. You get more shrill.
And that's what I actually object to. Right? Or you try to drag every conversation into your conspiracy, right? Which is the same thing. You're trying to get this out. Right?
Right.
And what I've seen just very quickly is the need to amplify and spin has what you're saying, Brent?
They're spinning in place.
Right, they're spinning in place.
Voltage
has gone down.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let's. I want to wheel it back to these pointers. They're spinning around, right? It's like captured too much voltage, no place to escape to.
Yes.
Right. Now it's like it has enough to escape, so it can get back to the ethers. Will carry the wave.
Well, it's just you remember you feel very ostracized when right, and so these guys, they feel they found a thing. It's not false, right? But what they did by their level of agitation is make themselves incredible, uncredible, right? Ridiculous,
Alienated.
Alienate. The alienation is what happens because of their being ridiculous. Right? So, but you're right. It's really just the same thing. It's the spinning. It's a beautiful example. And so what's happening is a little bit is the guys are like, well, we were fucking right. Okay, well, let's just taking the energy out of it without, in other words, so much that they're now not assholes. Do you know what I mean? That's
right now they've calmed down enough. They may become useful and able to integrate into the society.
Right.
Which other people aren't being asshole either. They're not being agitated by being told the truth now because they were afforded the position to go, hey, you're a conspiracy theorist.
So, but conspiracy theory and oppression narratives, they have a lot in common, right? The thing is, they're both conspiracy and oppression narratives attribute intent to what is often incentive, right? And in our case, we say lack of constraint, limits, which is law.
Mm-hmm.
And so both sides play this fucking game, right? All right. But what I would like to do is, how do we take the wind out of the lefts? You know what I'm saying? Can we say, well, you're not oppressed, but the result feels like it. You're not being conspired against, but the result certainly looks like it. Well, the answer is you were conspired against and you are oppressed. But I mean, it's not really by the whole point isn't to conspire against you, oppress you. It's to satisfy these fucking these selfish fucks up at the top here, satisfying their own interests, results in oppressing and conspiring against you. Right. And so I'm trying to figure out how do we get that same reaction out of the left? In other words, how do we engineer the conspiracy and oppression narratives, right? As well, we just learned a lot from this conspiracy thing coming out. It's like, fuck, they really are conspiring, and it's way worse than we thought.
I use forgive. Why don't you forgive one another and then point your eyes at the
enemy,
responsible people, right? Those who we should hold accountable, take their stuff and redistribute. Like, let's say we're sorry, go our separate ways. Take care of the enemy. And let's see if we can't do something better, because this isn't going good. It's going bad. The trends are bad. Everyone's, even under the amelioration of people's frames, conspiracy theories coming true. That just means the deck is stacked up against you for sure. That's what all the conspiracy theory people were saying. Hey, we're way behind here. Like, they're colluding against us.
Can we do a positioning paper, or I mean, basically an article,
of course,
on oppression and on the similarities and how we want to solve it for both?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't see why that's a possible. That's an initiative that we can hold. Because what we really want is the enemy to be the government, not the other side.
Well, I don't see it any different than solving the problems between men and women and their ability to deal with their authority structures. Mm-hmm. Right? Because the left has a feminine instinct, the right masculine instinct. You ameliorate their problems by telling them how they can cooperate with one another against the enemy.
So you're saying male-female differences, political difference, or we can actually address those two things in a hierarchy, and then so we're trying to, the core problem we're trying to address is that.
It's like this. So what we're working on is like a promissory note contract, and it is to be included, and anybody can participate. You have to make it. It's like I go back to Mencken. It's a forward an advanced auction of stolen goods, and we're taking all their stuff and we're going to distribute it to those who help based on what their role they choose to take is.
It's a redistribution of goods that were stolen from you. So this is actually justice and equilibratory.
And it can redistribute for versus oppression and redistribute versus conspiracy.
This has been a very fruitful discussion.
It's very strange.
You can be
very liberating to just decide to pursue H.L. Mencken's theory as a positive action plan as opposed to mere waggery.
I wonder, I probably could, at this point, write everything from both the lefts and points of view. In other words, because I just view, they're just not, I mean, we did once you get everything's male and female, right? It's just, and you realize they're all some sort of mirror of each other, right? You're like, okay, well, you just see the world this way and you see the world that way, and it's a division of time and population. So, and so we interpret the world this way. So how do we make everybody happy? And the only problem we're going to get into that I can see is that the reality is that it's just a small percentage of men who are actually adults.
It's always been that way, though. They have to provide
nothing new.
Rules. We have to provide better rules.
I mean, it's just, you shouldn't expect it to be otherwise. And this idea that we should try to engineer it so it's otherwise is only destructive.
Yes.
Because the introduction of any woman into a group that's dependent on adversarial competition destroys its adversarial advantage. So we have something. What about something in the eugenic thing is along the same lines, right? It's like well, the thing we have going for us, and Rudy was saying this yesterday, is that is like I'm enjoying my talks with him. That's why I'm quoting. I'm trying to, again, I'm always trying to promote the guy. So he said, well, you know, you have the archaic problem. Excuse me. Rudy said it yesterday. I'm always trying to promote him. And Zihan is on this kick now too, which is that a city, we've known in a long time in economics that a city is a genetic sink. It basically takes in IQ points and grinds them into dirt, right? It takes reproduction and grinds it into dirt. The only thing that tends to happen is that it makes it a little easier for elites to find each other, right? But otherwise, the problem is by elites finding each other, what do? They combine interests and don't have any fucking kids. So it doesn't matter that they find each other if the net result is they put in it's a genetic coffee grinder, right? That turns them all into grounds. Well, Zihan was trying to make so that's a deterministic thing that's showing up everywhere, right? That's showing up in our numbers. The problem is the world is organized into, most of the world has organized into dominantly urban environments with high reproductive costs and low opportunity costs, right? And so that what's happened is the more urbanized a society, the faster it can degenerate. Right? Some societies don't treat a clan as an urban environment. Does that make sense to you? In other words, they stay inside the clan and they degenerate within the clan the same way they degenerate in the city. So, but what happened in the U.S. is because we have quite a bit of space, is that our people who want to reproduce can move into space where they have higher opportunity costs, but higher opportunity costs drive out the people that are parasites. And so we have the rural areas, despite not having the elites that they have in that migrate to the cities, are producing a selection bias that's favoring the long term, maintaining advantage over the long term. Which is precisely why starting with Obama, they started intentionally placing dysgenic groups among eugenic groups. In other words, they're trying to bring people to where white people are. So over the time, I can see things happening. Now, but back to it, if we come out and say we're going to do these things, that's a uniform. We're going to advance this in everyone's interest. That's a stick together strategy, right? At the cost of the hard left, the finance sector, and the deep state, and the media, and the academy, the credentialists, right? And those credentialists are going to rebel like crazy. Now, if we say it, now we could go with the alternate, which is it's time to separate and devolve the federal government to the states, where you can have left-wing places, right-wing places. Are those two proposals mutually exclusive, or are they compatible?
They're compatible.
Certainly. I think you roll it all into one process.
Lawful is our only criteria.
Say that again, please.
Lawful of the law. That's our only criteria.
Do whatever you want within the law.
I'm interested to what people are going to think up.
Well, the answer, of course, is that the intelligent left knows reality. The reality is that it's like the Black community. You put us all on ourselves, we're fucked. Right? The answer is no. You won't be. Because what you'll do is have the incentives to produce a majority middle class society, even given your demographic distribution.
You'll raise the trade with those around you. at the benefit of your own,
Right.
which will improve your people. I'm skeptical of people who don't favor their family and the people they like and love more than other people. That makes me skeptical of people. It's odd.
Usually means they're dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Or they're just virtue signaling.
We virtue
Yeah.
signal that, like we virtue signal dysfunction as though it's how we function in this society. It's not that, it's a dysfunctional thing to signal.
How do we deal with psychotic, solipsistic, the empathizing, solipsistic, psychotic projecting? Because there's a lot of those women out there. There's a lot of them.
Where you afford
I
do
don't
that.
think you deal with them per se, but you deal with those who orchestrate their actions to effective force.
We afford the tools for people to deal with dysfunctional people where they are.
The trick is you try to avoid them being organized by people who are malicious actors.
Well, how many OnlyFans accounts have to be for that not to be a dysfunctional thing among these people?
Oh, I couldn't track that. Sorry.
There's a demonstration in reality for those who are dysfunctional, where consensus overrides any sort of logic or productivity or anything like that. So because other people do it, they do it. We remove those arenas. We remove access to those arenas by putting the constraints, the limits that we put on people via the law. And
right. One of the groups you did not mention in your small litany of people who are going to make noise includes the media, which was not mentioned, but the media needs to be properly limited.
Interested that one of those guys, it's media, a writer or editor for one of those online, and it's not Vice, but it's one of those, right? And he said something about how Twitter was slower and buggier, despite the fact that it's faster and less buggy, right? And I said that's not Twitter, that's so-called journalists and their ideas that are buggy, slow and buggy. And I just got a ton of, I had to block like 50 people. A ton of these people come in that are just spewing nonsense. If you look at what they do, they all call themselves journalists. They're not. They're stringers.
What's that mean, stringer?
A stringer is a guy who is a freelancer who tries to come up with stuff that a media place will buy. And so you write a story. So basically they're gossip salesmen. Independent gossips.
Yeah.
And they have a fucking chip and a half on their shoulder, all of them, because it's like the negative version of an artist. An artist will go out and create something, and they're like, I just don't want to be in society, so I'm going to sell my pottery or my custom-made leather shoes, like custom-made ladies' hats, right? This person's checking out, and I have very good friends who are like this, right? I can't, they produce jewelry because I know the jewelry community, right? And they just live they live in a little log house. They got a van, and they spend 6 months of the year going around to all these fairs and art fairs and whatever, right? They make, they make a living at it, right? And they pay off their house, and they're wearing the fucking tie-dye shit and whatever, right? And they're messy hair and long beards and whatever, right? I absolutely love those fucking people. Right? There's
Right.
not a bad thing in the world you can say about them. And frankly, there's not a bad thing in the world they say about anybody. Right? Look, but that's what a journalist is. He's the opposite. He's stringer. They're bad people selling a bad product. They're selling gossip. And so when you see these people coming back and I'm a journalist, they're not. They're stringers. They're fucking antisocial, people who want attention and who want to assert dominance
Hmm.
by getting their stuff sold, which is largely complaining and virtue signaling. And so, if we say here, so I'm taking a long way to answering Brandon's question. A journalist testifies. A gossip doesn't.
Hmm.
Right. So how many journalists do we have? Maybe 3. You know, but now here's the deal. If you were a journalist and you were held to standards of testimony, how many journalists would survive?
Right.
100,000.
Enough.
But what would they make?
Everything we need. Yeah.
They would make a lot.
What would they make in compensation?
Well,
they would be compensated handsomely
because it's fucking hard. And
they'd be doing things other people can't do.
Right. Well, because it's actually hard.
Yeah.
Right. And so now all of a sudden you're up every word you say in public.
Well, it looks a lot more like curation.
Well, I mean, now you're saying, okay, if you're working for me and I'm going to say it, right, you need to know what testimony is and is testifiable.
Oh, yeah.
And then when that person says, yeah, but goes to the source, says, yeah, but what can I testify to? Because what can you testify to? So my view would be that if we required, would we still have gossip? Well, we would have, finish one thread first. So if you had journalists that did that, we'd all like the news.
We would need it.
Huh?
We would need it.
We can't have a democratic society unless we do have it.
Yeah, that'd be necessary. Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise you have rule by media, which is gossip. Now there are a bunch of people who run around and talk about what Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie are doing, or
right.
There's a whole list of young actresses and musicians who, God, they suck, by the way. It's amazing how bad they suck. Airhead level people that are really popular because it's gone very feminine now in the music industry. And so you have all this crap out there, and people want to have those fake friends, right? They want to what do you call it? Experience life through the other.
Live vicariously.
Vicariously, thank you. They want to do that, and it's great. The difference is now, what if we restored defamation in both libel and slander, right? So that you could only talk about the good things about these people, or when they got, some real crime happened. You couldn't libel and slander them. Well, we'd have the same thing, right? We'd have a similar thing. So the problem is, how many people are going to be in the business after you hold them accountable for libel and slander, even though what they're doing is it's not really journalism, it's reporting, right? And then what's the difference? Journalists deal with matters social and political. The reporters deal with something personal or think of it as entertainment, right? And then so what would happen if we enforced libel, slander again? That's defamation, and not under the terms that are currently there, but under the old terms. You don't have to prove damage. You have to prove it's false. I mean, it's not true, right? And, it's very hard to slander people and truthfully, unless there really is, right? Because of a crime. Even then, we have the courts. But what would happen? Well, almost no one would be able to be a reporter or a journalist. But you would get paid really well if you were a reporter or a journalist. Why? Because we'd professionalize the fucking industry. And sanctions would be serious. You don't want to defend, you don't want to pay all those fucking lawsuits. Hey, Brad, how do doctors feel about lawsuits?
It's like a silly question, man.
Oh, the point
It's like you gotta get, there's a paper going around. It's like, so what happens is you get patients come and they say, will you sign this and say that my dog's a service animal so he can go in my apartment? And it's like yes, all the time. So he's my emotional support animal. And it's like this. Used to be you would do it, but it's like, I'm not a psychiatrist. I have to refer you to a psychiatrist to get that paper filled out, because it's like, I'm not, because it says at the bottom now, the apartment owners are like, are you willing to testify in court about this?
Right.
It's like, bing.
Dogs adapt to people. They like them better. That's why they want to take them around.
Yes.
We've licensed some foolery in the dog.
Can I get an emotional support hooker? Oh, that's a wife. Wait a minute.
Just have a woman dress up in a dog suit and say that she's a dog. You'll get away. Just put a vest on her. You'll get away with it. And if you don't like, you can bring it to court. 50-50, you get a judge that rules for you.
Right. If she has to say she identifies it.
It's got to be voluntary. They're big on that. You have to have a filled out consent form.
I need a female human support animal.
Yeah, man.
Can I drag her around on a leash?
I want to train them.
I'm going to go to hell. I am.
I'm pretty sure you're already there, brother. It's like looking for Virgil to work our way out. God, this sort of sucks. And we're getting ready for 2023, and it's like this one. It's like, Happy New Year. I'm like, I think it's going to be worse than 22.
Yeah, it's so going to be worse.
It doesn't look good from where I'm sitting. I'm like, this lays out like shit.
And the fucking government is like trying to keep spirits high, and I'm like, what are you goddamn crazy?
No, they're just doing. They're obligated to do that.
It's like the government and the Bitcoin bros sound the same.
Oh, it's just. But it's the madness. You see, there. It's like we'll go back to that dog running around in circles again. Which is the opposite of doubling down. So it's like doubling down is when he's pointing, right? He's doubling down, and he's like, that's what they're doing. They're just they point harder, right? And so the joke on the meme that I see making fun of the people on the right, the optimistic right, is vote harder.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, okay, so that's not going to work, but it's like, it's time to turn around in circles and get out of the loop. So we're in a pickle, because it more and more everybody doubling down is where this is the compression, right?
Mm-hmm. So
I'm sure there's a physical analog here, because it has to do with, it goes to the quantum foamy stuff.
wait,
It's quantum foam. There's too much energy in this space, and it has nowhere to escape to.
yes, exactly.
You can only fold a piece of paper in half like 7 or 8 times.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more folding.
That's it. There's no place for it to go.
So where were we?
We were just talking about the restoration of libel and slander to correct media errors by limitations.
Okay, so this applies to professors at university too, right?
Yes.
So they're going to push against it. So Marxism, postmodern, this is all a false promise, right? It's all lying.
So what you do is you defund those. You
Well,
make them
you defund it first, and then after 5 years you criminalize it, right?
It's warfare. I'll frame it as warfare the whole time.
That's being very generous if you give them some time. If you serve them with a cease and desist order, that would be perhaps more appropriate.
Well, defund them you can do immediately, which really, I don't know. I mean, what I don't want to do is pass a law and all of a sudden the guy's got a lawsuit the next day. I mean, that kind of seems kind of unfair. I want to, you're going to say no. It's perfectly fair.
He gets to appeal it, right?
So.
I know. I think that it goes like this: you defund them, and they'll make a lawsuit, and they can have a lawsuit until they're blue in the face.
No, okay. Your argument is don't give them a time frame. Okay, I'll go with that.
I just figured you'd be like that.
Yeah, you're kind of smart.
Right. Wait, don't care.
You want them to stop being maladaptive, Doc.
Yes.
So we're good. So we have a suite of objections we have to raise. We have to answer, right? So that's in our, we've got that in our talking points, right? Did I get that? This is our content. I don't have to, it's somewhere else over here. No, that's not it. Where did I put it? There it is. What was the question I was just asking? Talking points, right?
Right.
Okay, there's something else here. There more than one, yes. Negative enemy tactics, hard business, and we need talking points. What did I just call those things?
Objections.
Okay. It's really not that many. You know, you have this, you know, yeah, there's not that many. That's easy to do. Okay.
Right.
So the work Brandon has given me. You got you giving me work, Brandon giving me work.
I know. It's just wicked.
Merciless.
Pretty
So,
much.
okay, so I can, if we do that, then we can do it. And there was another thing I said, we should do the left, we should do the male female explanation. What do we call that?
Some sort of compatibility chart.
Yeah, it's the objections left and right. I can't put it into words. I won't be able to write it down.
That's correct. It is a categorization by cognitive biases.
Even if we had the personal level, political level. I'm gonna handle it with we call it, it's conspiracy versus oppression.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Going back to mine. Well, Dr. Brandon
Yes,
and I have been working on the website.
very good.
Can I switch topics?
Yes,
Can I just show you what we did?
that would be great.
If I could find it. There we go.
Hmm.
So we have fixed a lot, white spaces, etc.
Hmm.
We haven't hooked these up yet, and there's some little more to do there. We've started to fill out this. And we've started to fill out that. We've got that, of course. Haven't done that. We have cleaned up this about learning, and we're putting the courses back.
Right.
We've mostly worked on is fixing this registration stuff and donation and simplifying about. And so we've got the, not that looks that impressive to you, but it seems like we did a lot of work so far. You can still make a one-time donation.
Hmm.
I'm going to, where is it? Do I have one open here? No, I don't have one open. I'm gonna log out. Yes, I don't like that, by the way. We don't fix that yet. It should take us back to here. Anyway, so if you want to log in, you log in and register, right? If you register, you come up with just free, or you can join an amount. And then we've got this membership level, which is doesn't cost you anything. There's some account information. There's your participation. We've added this. This is what's prevents
Yes.
bots, because it's really killing me. Can't remember how many $3 fees I've returned. And so that allows us to, the next page is just accept your card, etc. So I'll do this, I won't see. So I don't want to do that, but except it gives you your credit card. Do you remember what that the membership checkout was? What the next one was? Is it account information? Brandon, do you remember what it was?
Ask your question again, Curt.
What's the account information page? I have to go over here.
Oh, I think you have to log in and it goes to that page. I'm not sure if there's a way to navigate there other than in the footer, and I don't
You're
think
right, you're
live
right.
in the link.
So if I log in, I'm gonna do that.
There it is.
All right, so there's that. You have your profile. All right. Hello. Change your membership. I don't like the order these are in. I'm gonna change that. Change your membership. All right. They're all the same. I don't know why there's two things there. That's what, this is just a record of when you did everything. All right. So we have got the, now we've got to hook up all that registration crap to here and the donors here. And there's other stuff under, it's going under here. So we gotta hook all that up. But
Hmm.
it's all working. So, and we have a list of content we have to produce, which is not this one. That is my, I did it again, didn't I? Oh, what the fuck is going on here? I have a lazy middle finger. What does that mean?
Hmm.
All right, so these are, and this is our to-dos. Anyway, so what does that mean? That means that we're getting there, and we should have. And that's stuff. So I have now, and then we have Martin starting with me on the content soon. And Martin will help with moving the stuff over into the book.
Very good.
All right. Anything else we have to for today? We did our 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I feel like I bored you, Dr. Brad.
I'm just low energy.
All right.
I've got I've been inspired more, and that's good, but I'm not high energy.
You know, you're very red, white, and blue today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if I don't, I'm sure I'll talk to you later. I'm going to send you a late night Happy New Year.
All right, thank you.
I love you, man. Talk to you later.
All right.